Welcome, welcome, welcome to a meeting with the Bishop. I am your host, Dr. Bill. And we're going to go back to what we were talking about very recently. It's always a challenge to talk about different things. I want you to come on in and sit and grab a coffee. Let's do some thinking. Got a few things on my mind. But what I don't want to leave you without an opportunity to voice your view. So without any further ado, I'm going to go back to our reading. All right. Yesterday, we were talking about avoiding groupthink. And if you are with us today, what you'll see is as I've highlighted the things that were main points. See, as leaders, we can talk about that because each one of us is in a leadership capacity of some sort. If you're in a family, of course, your job is to lead your family. And as you lead your family, the thing you'll find out is that at some point you're going to be giving some instruction and giving some direction. We also went into it a little bit about communication and what that is and what it entails. So as we go through, we want to go forward here to the next section. We also talked about yesterday's success, the fact that it depends on the speed with which information could pass in both directions along the chain of command. Now, I know that might be tough for some people because we have a challenge with between the genders as to who's supposed to do what. And I believe that women are not uh, really knowledgeable about what submission really means and what's important about it. Now, I liken the family dynamic to the relationship between a bodyguard and his client. Many times, the bodyguard, his job is to what? To see dangers and to make sure that danger doesn't reach his client. Well, in a light, because we deal with our women as the weaker vessel, not that she is weak, but we protect her. And sometimes protection means you got to do what somebody tells you to do. Y'all are not listening to me. You're going to have to do what somebody tells you to do. And if you got a problem with taking instruction, you can make bank on the fact that your life not going to be very safe. And it's that way anywhere. See, this paradigm fits. This paradigm fits wherever you have a dynamic where there is a hierarchy. Somebody got to be in charge. Right? Listen to what I've highlighted. It says when a failure like this happens, when a golden opportunity slips through your fingers, you naturally look for a cause. Maybe you blame incompetent officers, your faculty, your faulty technology, your flawed intelligence, but that is to look at the world backwards. That is to look at the world backwards. It ensures more failure. The truth is that everything starts from the top. What determines your failure or success in your style of leadership and chain of command is the chain of command that you design. So it is very important that we choose good partners. Y'all are not listening to me. It is important that we choose good partners. Likewise, in the dynamic of a community, we need to choose those people who are qualified to do the work that's necessary to make sure that the community is successful. So here we are at the next section, remote control. I hope you're reading along with me. You can get this at pdfdrive.com. Go there and subscribe to the site. Many of their works are complimentary. In other words, you don't have to pay for them. But it would be a good idea to go on ahead and make an investment. All right. Matter of fact, let's forego this. Let's go right to the interpretation. All right. When Marshall became chief of staff, he knew that he would have to hold himself back. The temptation was to do combat with everyone in every problem area. The recalcitrance of the generals, political feuds, the layers of waste. But Marshall was too smart to give in to that temptation. First, there are too many battles to fight, and they would exhaust him. He'd get frustrated, lose time, and probably give himself a heart attack. Second, by trying to micromanage the department, he would have become embroiled in petty entanglements and lose sight of the larger picture. And finally, he would come across a bully. The only way to slay this many-headed monster, Marshall knew, was to step back. He had no rule. He had to rule indirectly through others, controlling with such a light touch that no one could realize how thoroughly he dominated. Let me say this to you, okay? That when it comes to leading people, you have to understand people. I remember hearing this as a young minister. I was having a few challenges with one of the leaders, and it was the idea that whenever I came up with an idea, this particular leader, he saw it was good, but he shot it down. Then he would go on the back end and try to establish the very same program. Now, what he didn't understand was that I didn't care. Y'all listening to me? I didn't care what he was doing. I didn't care because I knew that if this was going to be a success, that it was going to be a team effort. But apparently he wanted to be a glory hog. So he presented it to the bishop. And the bishop, in his wisdom, he waited until the quarterly conference. And he pulled me aside and said, you need your own church. That people, this kind of stuff scares people. And I didn't get it right away. He talked to me in personal terms. He said, Tim, you got to get to know people. And I carried that thing along through these last 20 years. And I understood what he was saying, because when you're involved in a group, everybody has their own spirit. They have their own mentality, their own temperaments. And what you're doing as a leader is you have Lego blocks. Oh, you're not listening. Your organization is like Lego blocks. You're going to have to take what's there and you're going to have to put it together in such a way that it builds harmony. And if there's a deficiency, you may have to shoot some gaps for a minute. But the universe, the creator, is really good about sending what we need in order to do what he has ascribed, if he indeed ascribed it. So here's this guy. He was, he was part of the army. Matter of fact, let's go back and review a little bit. Okay. Bit. Get this. All right. In the late 1930s, U.S. Brigadier General George C. Marshall, 1880 1958, preached the need for a major military reform. The Army had too few soldiers, and they were badly trained. Current doctrine was ill suited to modern technology. The list of problems went on. In 1939, President Franklin D. Roosevelt had to select his next Army Chief of Staff. The appointment was critical. World War II had begun in Europe. Roosevelt believed that the United States was sure to get involved. He understood the need for military reform, so he bypassed generals with more seniority and experience and chose Marshall for the job. The appointment was a curse in disguise, for the War Department was hopelessly dysfunctional. How many times have you gone into a situation and it was a complete mess? And I'm sure that if there's some people that are pastors, I mean, even as a karate instructor, I've gone into different schools that would want me to teach, and what I found is that it was a hodgepodge because the chief, the guy who owned the school, had one vision, but he didn't communicate it to the instructors. So you had students who were getting promoted, and they were getting promoted on time more so than their skill. Okay, are you with me? So here's a piece of gold for you. Whenever you get assigned a position, remember what we talked about yesterday. We talked about knowing those people. You got to know what you have available to you. You can't build until you understand what materials you have. It's a hard thing to try to build a skyscraper and all you have is regular cement. You're going to need some girders. You're going to need some rebar. You're going to need You're going to need a whole bunch of other things that are just not available. So you got to know who you're working with. And so here it is, right here, Marshall, Brigadier General Marshall, walked into a dysfunctional situation. Now watch, here was a problem. Many of his generals had monstrous egos. Am I singing this song to somebody? Many of his generals had monstrous egos and the power to impose their way of doing things. Senior officers, instead of retiring, took jobs in the department, amassing power bases and fiefdoms that they did everything they could to protect. Listen to me carefully now. You know, it's I tell you, I laugh inside because as I try to make this applicable to the life we're living right now, I'd be doggone if we don't see these exact things. As dark Americans, we have a huge problem, and this is one of them. People with these big egos, okay, they think because they have certain degrees that okay, I'm an authority. Well, that may be. However, the Bible talks about one who is chief being minister. In other words, you didn't get that degree so that you could be the head honcho, hog dog. You got it so that you could be the best servant. And then being the best servant, you bring others into the servant mindset. Like I say, I'll go back to the bodyguard. The bodyguard is serving his client. Okay? He's serving them. He's serving them by being the eyes and the ears and the muscle that they need so that they don't have to be their own eyes, ears, and muscle. Y'all are not listening. Now watch this. A place of feuds, waste, communication breakdowns, and overlapping jobs. The department was a mess. How could Marshall revamp the Army for global war if he could not control it? How could he create order and efficiency? Now, as usual, the author uses examples from other countries, from other people who have had these experiences. And I love the way he does this. This is from Baron Antoine Henry de Hamony, 1779 to 1860. Okay, so it's to your advantage to kind of read some stuff. Y'all are not listening. What must be the result of an operation which is but partially understood by the commander? Since it is not his own conception, I have undergone pitiable experience as prompter at headquarters, and no one has a better appreciation of the value of such services than myself. And it is particularly in a council of war that such a part is absurd. The greater the number, and the higher the rank of the military officers who compose the council, the more difficult it will be to accomplish the triumph of truth and reason. However, small be the amount of dissent. What would have been the action of a council of war to which Napoleon proposed the movement of Arcola, the crossing of the St. Bernard and the maneuver at Ulm, or that the Gira at Jena, the timid would have regarded them as rash even to madness. Others would have been 1,000 difficulties of execution, and all would have been concurred in rejecting them. And if, on the contrary, they had been adopted and had been executed by anyone but Napoleon, they would they not certainly have proved failures? We talked about Napoleon earlier on, and Napoleon had the idea that, okay, I see how these guys are fighting. I see how these guys are rolling. All right? So I'm going to do something different. I need to take them off balance. So Napoleon was instrumental in guerrilla war up there. Oh yeah, he had his volleys and he had his regiments, but he caught them off their timing. He caught them when they were relaxing, and he caught them. He was in places they never expected him, doing things they had never trained for. See, so it's important to understand when you wanna wage a war, you got to first understand the war, understand the dynamics of the war, and understand that. Trust me, that fighter. If you're worried about his skills, you're gonna lose already. Be concerned about his skills to a degree. Know his skill set so that you can put yourself in a better position. I tell you, over the last 10 years, that has been an overwhelming thing with me. I stopped getting angry with people who do things. I stopped getting angry with people who were prejudiced. I stopped getting angry with people who were benefiting from racism. I stopped getting angry with all of them, and I started watching. Okay? And the reason I started watching so heavily was because if you watch them long enough, they'll start telling on themselves. They'll give you what you need. I was blessed to be able to meet with some very, very prominent martial artists worldwide. And in order for you to get to this particular rank that I'm at right now, you got to challenge with people from different countries, different styles, different systems. And there was an overwhelming thing. What do you bring to the martial arts world as a grandmaster? Because I was establishing a new style, something no one else had seen before. And so what happened was I took what they had and I made it so that if I had to fight against that person, it wouldn't be effective. Because I'd been trained for 40 years. Anybody who's been doing anything that long, you should know something. So everything I wanted my students to be equipped to, one, recognize the style. Recognize the style and understand the temperament. What would a person who is practicing Tiger Crane, what would he be thinking when he attacked you, if he attacked you on the street? What would he be trying to do? What would be his motive? Then Taekwondo, karate, jiu-jitsu, all of these people, Japanese and Brazilian, they all have their mindsets. And they teach out of a system that's not abridged. In other words, it's passed down. And it's passed down with zero alterations. In the mind of the fighter, there's a particular application, but most styles send down in application. This is what you do with this. This is what you do with that. There are times when, even in those applications, they're not culturally sensitive, they're not time sensitive. So people come with new stuff in a new time. So I wanted to train my students to be able to recognize those nuances and be one step outside, one step inside. If a person was a long-range fighter, I showed them how to get inside. If a person was a short-range fighter, I showed them how to make sure that they could not maneuver quick enough, fast enough, or with enough power to be effective. This is what he has to do. This is what the opponent did. Another person who did that, the great Hannibal, okay, who fights with it, who rides in on elephants. Usually you ride in on a horse, right? He rides in on elephants. He trained those guys so that they could go long times marching and still be powerful fighters. Anyway, let's move on. Some 10 years later, Marshall had served as the assistant commander of the infantry school at Fort Benning, where he had trained many officers. Throughout his time there, he kept a notebook in which he recorded the names of promising young men. Soon after becoming chief of staff, Marshall began to retire the older officers in the War Department and replace them with these younger men whom he had personally trained. These officers were ambitious. They shared his desire for reform and encouraged them to speak their minds and show initiative. They included men like Omar Bradley and Mark Clark, who would be crucial in World War II. But no one was more important than the protege Marshall spent the most time with, Dwight D. Eisenhower. The relationship began a few days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and Marshall asked Eisenhower, then a colonel, to prepare a report on what should be done in the Far East. The report showed Marshall that Eisenhower shared his ideas on how to run the war. For the next few months, he kept Eisenhower in the War Plans Division and watched him closely. The two men met every day, and in that time, Eisenhower soaked up Marshall's style of leadership, his way of getting things done. Marshall tested Eisenhower's patience by indicating that he had planned to keep him in Washington instead of giving him the field assignment that he desperately wanted. The colonel passed the test. Much like Marshall himself, he got along well with the other officers, yet was quietly forceful. Okay? So that'll give you an idea of what's going on. Right? So this will make sense. Right? So, as we continue to read, I want you to grab onto something. I want you to grab onto something. First thing I need you to grab onto, there needs to be a unified goal. You're not going to win a war. There's not a unified goal. Everybody within the ranks has to see that goal and has to understand it thoroughly. Okay? You have to understand it thoroughly. And anybody who didn't have the temperament, didn't have the mentality, didn't have the desire to work hard, y'all needed to go. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you're a Bible reader, Everybody remembers Gideon, right? Everybody remembers Gideon. Gideon was first running. He was running away, scared, had lost his will to fight, lost his desire to fight. The man of God found him sitting under a tree. Are you listening? Found him sitting under a tree thinking he was cool and calm, and he was not planning, he wasn't plotting, he was just, okay, I'm safe, let me relax. The man of God told him, look, I want you to go kill these Philistines. He said, wait a minute, hold on, you're talking to the wrong guy. You're talking to the wrong guy. The angel said, the messenger said, you mighty man of valor. So what did he do? He reiterated in his mind what he was designed for, what his station was, and what should be coming out of his nature. You're a mighty man of valor. Y'all not listening. See, I spent my whole entire ministry life trying to follow folks and try to make somebody think that I was this awesome person. Okay, trying to make them think I was this awesome person, and it it worked for a while. It worked for a while. I'm not gonna lie to you. It worked for a while. Y'all are not hearing me. It worked. It worked until I started looking at the reality. Y'all are not hearing me. It worked until I saw the reality. The reality is, what's the church about? What's supposed to be happening? Why did God establish the church? Why? And what I found out, and when I found out, it made it hard. It made it hard from then on. And the reason why it became hard from that day on was because when you look at purpose and you start getting, when the light shines, like the saying goes, you can't stop the rooster once the sun comes out. And that's all I wanted. That's all I want. I wanted to see the church move into that era and that time frame and that power that when, oh my goodness, so that God could be shown so mightily that he would move us as men to establish those things that our people needed. Didn't happen. It still isn't. You know, the hardest thing in the world is to decide that you're going to go and move on your own. Oh, excuse me for the noise and stuff outside. It's amazing how, right when you get ready to talk about the Word of God, when you start wanting to talk about the truth, how there are things that happen. Okay? So what did Gideon have to do? Gideon had to first pull himself together. He had to pull himself together and realize, okay, I've not been living up to my thing. I still ain't ready to fight. So he said, listen, if this is God, and this is what happens now, I'm not going to lie to you. Okay? What happens is people start to question whether it's God or not. When you are given something that is knowingly, it may put you in danger. It may put you in a place that you're just totally flustered and don't know what to do. You start to question whether it's God. And so he said, listen here, I have this fleece. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to put this fleece out here. Okay? Put this fleece out. If the fleece is wet and the ground is dry, I'll go. He woke up the next morning, and he found it. And the Bible says he had enough to fill a bowl, to fill a vessel, and he wrung out the water. And just to make sure, just to make sure he wasn't just getting the smoke blown, maybe it's some trick or something. Maybe somebody came and wet him overnight while he was sleeping. He said, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to put this back out here, and if the ground is wet but the fleece is dry, I'll go. When he woke up the next morning, not only was the ground sopping with dew, but the fleece was completely dry, and he lifted up the fleece, and the ground underneath the fleece was wet. So he said, okay, let's do this. And so he called out all of these guys, 10,000 the Bible says. They called out 10,000 guys. So now here we go. He got himself together, and God is still with him. God is still moving that on him. The messenger is saying, listen, this is how you do this. You got to choose the elites. You can't choose no punkified guys. You can't choose no weaklings. You can't choose nobody that's scared. You can't choose nobody that would run. You can't choose anybody who doesn't see the bigger picture, who sees that, you know what? I might die on this battlefield. But better to die on that battlefield than to die running from somebody. Because this is what they were doing anyway. So he called them all together, and believe me, the Bible doesn't tell you what the message was that bring those guys there, but I'll tell you one thing. He must have mentioned, are you guys tired of running? Are you guys tired of this group that keeps attacking us? Are you guys tired? Because if you're getting tired, if you're really tired of these folks and you want to eliminate them and get them out of the way, you come on with me. We're going to do this. And you know what? They came, 10,000 of them. So at the meeting, at the rally point, he said, listen here, the messenger whispered in his ear. He said, listen, this is what I want you to do. He said, you ask those guys if they want to go home. Ask them. He said, anybody want to go home? So Gideon stood up in front of everybody. He said, thank you for coming. Hallelujah. Have a praise meeting. But let me tell you this right here. I need to ask you something. He said, if there's anybody here that doesn't want to fight, that's scared, that wants to go home, you can leave right now. The Bible says a third of them, 3,000 men. That's significant. That's significant. 3,333 men. That's a third. Okay, with a repeating decimal. So what were they left? 7,776 men. The man of God said, it's still too many. Still too many. Let me tell you what you need to do now. He said, take them down to the water. Let them get a drink. They've been out here all day. We've been doing this stuff all day. It's hot. Let's go. Take them, get some. And so they did their little march. It was a march, maybe a couple of miles or something. They came to a waterway. He said, okay, guys, go ahead and get a drink. And those guys ran to the water. Many of them were so parched, they just threw their heads in the water. There's significance to all their heads in the water. There was some guy that kept the weapons on their side, and they put their hands in the water, brought the water. He said, listen, I want you to look around. He said, anybody with their head in the water, when they pull their head out, send them. So we need to do the math. 7,000. Listen here. 7,400 men were sent home. Gideon was left with 300. Okay? So what's the significance of that? This is what's happening right now is the call has been out. But you know what? Them ones that ran home, those are the ones that okay, well, I can't fight because, my wife's pregnant. I can't fight because I need to finish building my house. I can't fight because, I haven't been in it for a while. I can't fight because I don't like Gideon. I don't like them folks over there from that tribe. I can't do it because I need to go to work in the morning. I can't, listen here. These guys had every reason why they were afraid. Isn't that not the same thing that's happening today? Y'all talk to me. This is the same thing that's happening today. And this is what's contributed to this dysfunction. Those guys that stayed, remember, the 300 that was serious about fighting was still in the midst. So guess what? Now here's the second wave. The second wave is those guys that they all about the fight to the extent they can be manipulated by their emotions and by their passions. This is why he had to get rid of it. So what kind of guy are you today? Are you willing, listen here, are you willing to put some stuff down and make a sacrifice so that we can win as dark Americans? Or you just want to sit around and keep on rolling, rolling with the rush, ghost riding the whip. You got your blunt in your 40 and your Henny, and you're all good. Still want to keep slinging because you think that slinging is going to bring you the financial success. All you're doing is corrupting yourself. And guess what? Those young ladies that are looking at you, because they money love it. Y'all not listening to me. They money love it. They following you instead of being ladies and making themselves ready for when their real husband shows up. No, they hanging out with you, clapping booty and going up and down the pole. And some of them not even going up and down the pole. Y'all not listening to me. Gullible. Got to use themselves as a billboard, tatting themselves up with a bunch of stuff that doesn't mean anything. Just, oh, that looks nice. Let me put it on. So what God is looking for right now, is for 300 guys. And so if God is looking for 300, I'm looking for 300. You want to make a change? Guess what? See, if you've been reading this and not skipping by when you see me on the screen, see, because I'm not that handsome guy.